Hello there, and welcome to a new build guide for Age of Wonders 4. In this one, I have a dragon build for the Reaver faction. It is really powerful, has been of course playtested in brutal difficulty, and it offers skirmishers, fighters, and supporters as your main backbone of your army. I want to talk first off about the racial and cultural traits. We're working with the following things. Sneaky, to get yourself a lot of easier flanking damage hits off. It is really powerful because most of your units that you're utilizing only need one action point to fire, and this makes even supporters hit quite hard. Keep in mind though that Sneaky won't be applying to most of your animal units that you're running in this build, so it's only for the supporters basically, but it actually does make lots of a difference. Fast recuperation, I love this one because you already heal fast with the dragon traits that you run with the tomes, and this amplifies this a little bit more, although I think here you could swap out whatever you like in the 2-point area. I just found this thematically very fitting, and it has the big advantage that your army will be up and running very quickly again, which is very fitting to the Reaver aggressive playstyle. Elusive is a really good trait to pick up because it lowers the damage that you get from retaliation attacks, and since you want to be on the offensive all the time, it's a very powerful 1-point trait. Cultural, I went for mana channelers and powerful evokers here. It's a little bit of a weird choice at the first glance, but it has a lot of power. First off, powerful evokers offers you a supporter right from the get-go. Big power spike because it's a tier 2 unit for the Reavers. Also, extra combat casting points never hurt. We spam a lot of support units, therefore this trait really works out well. The other one I picked up was mana channelers, so you got low costs for summonings, so you can keep your armies restocked. There are several other things that you could pick up. Prolific swarmers to have cheaper tier 1 units, runesmiths to cheapen down the many unit enchantments that you're running, or ritual cannibals for more support and more rewards for killing off stuff. Lots of different options. I went for this one because I figured it is a really good start, but if anything I would recommend to swap out mana channelers and keep the powerful evokers because it is really surprisingly powerful to have a supporter extra at the beginning. Now, let's move over to the tomes for this build. We're starting off, as you might have already guessed, with the Tome of Evolution. This offers you Slither Hatchlings, which are brutal skirmishers replacing your racial skirmishers almost entirely, and the ability to summon wyverns, which are also summonable on the fly, therefore really good to restock your armies while you're on the road. Youthful Rejuvenation is really good for your early game since it offers resurgence for your evolving units. You just need to slap that on one of your evolving units, either Wyvern or Slither Hatchling, and then you can just let them die and you have no negative repercussions due to that. This spell makes these guys your expendable throwaway units in the early game, which is really powerful. Rapid Evolution Enchantment is a must-have, since it gives your little guys that can evolve on tier 1 and 2 even slip away, which is basically a lifesaver once a battle. It's stupidly good. Also, they gain more experience from combat, and that's true for all tiers, so this is also important later for your dragons. Draconic Vitality is just nice to have. There's nothing more to say, it's just nice to have more resilient units. Shepherd is also something I strongly recommend to have in your armies. It's a novice support skill, and it makes your tier 1 units much more resilient. Really good stuff. The other tier 1 tome I use for this build is Tome of Beasts. It has several good things going on. You can use Animal Kinship, making your backline even more powerful because they gain crit chance and 10% damage when they're standing right next to animals, which occurs quite a lot. Marcus Prey is pretty cool because it triggers the flanking bonuses that we got already just right from the get-go, also sunders the defenses a little bit. Call of the Wild is an amazing power-up spell because we have mounted tier 3 units and we have a lot of animals, of course. And Summon Wild Animal is yet again another way of refilling your ranks. Wild Speakers are kind of like not that good for this build because we have way more powerful supporters, but Unleash the Beast is a pretty nice spell with a killing momentum, but apart from that, I would recommend not using them too much. Wildlife Sanctuary allows you to recruit animal units in cities, which is nice. Pack Leader gives them, again, even more flanking damage and crit chance, so this is really where we're starting to go places just with Tier 1. Tier 2, pick up Revelry and Mayhem, depending on your own choice of order. Revelry is offering you Blood Fury weapons, which is going into the majority of your army, offering you morale and strengthening bonuses whenever they kill off something, and a slight bonus in damage. You won't feel that damage bonus too much, but you will notice the crits. The Scalds are another add-on to your support backline, offering insanity and really good buffs that will make your army more hit harder, more crits, and movement bonuses plus regeneration. They really act as damage amplifiers and damage dealers at the same time. They are your most offensive supporters in the board. Revelous Hide gives you more morale bonuses for your backline, and Revels of Carnage is an amazing spell for this build because it allows you to evolutionize your units much faster, especially useful for the dragons later down the road. Carnival of Flesh and isn't too much of an interesting thing, although it helps fixing out the food issues that Reavers tend to have sometimes. Reveler's Triumph is amazing, and I totally recommend having it because it again amplifies critical hit damage, and that's really, really, really good. Mayhem acts as a debuffing instrument for the enemies, mostly picked up for Marks of Misfortune, and as you see here, it acts pretty much in every part of your army except for the fighters. I want to stress out here that Mark of Misfortune is triggering on melee attacks on the skirmishes as well, making it really, really brutally spread out on the enemy. It happens so quickly. Gremlins, you can summon up some skirmishes on the fly, always nice, because behind you triggers immediately the flanking bonuses, and Curse of Misfortune is nasty because it stacks up some fumbling, and you can use Soul Misfortune in case of a siege thing, and Infectious Insanity is amazing for every big battle where you have several banners against you, because you can basically block one entire banner with this thing. Slap it on the lowest enemy tier unit and hope it spreads out from there. Yeah, that's that. Tier 3, we of course pick up Tome of Dragons because obvious reasons. The dragons will give you tier 3 and tier 5 units respectively, and they will become your late game backbone. You get also Purifying Flame as a really powerful negative status effect purger for the mid-game, a basic instrument, especially since you get also a pretty big heal off of that. And Draconian Transformation helps your base race then to have natural regeneration, immunity to burning, and that's where your basic units also are really harder to kill. We don't utilize Flamer Focus at all in this build, so don't get your hopes too high. We don't rock Battle Mages, so the spells can be safely left out. And yeah, Dragon Attack is just a nice siege project. Also want to point out the Wyvern Eyrie is an amazing thing. Not only it gives it access to tier 3 Wyvern units, it also acts as a research post, so you get really a lot of goodness out of that. Firebomb, you can use that for your heroes, but that's pretty much it. When we go to the other tier 3 tome, I see two really, really mentionable things, but the Devastation tome is, in my humble opinion, the better choice. Simply because Flame Burst weapons get supplied to your skirmishes as well, and that's the point where your slithers start exploding people. It's again another critical hit steroid, so at that point your slithers will crit a lot, and if something dies, it'll explode. So just make sure that the last hits are now done by your melee units mostly. The rest of these things, Focus of Devastation is really cool for your supporters, especially since they get the ability to cancel out defense modes of the enemies. This is insane. This allows you to smack the enemies hard by just applying attacks there. And Unleash the Warhounds is a really nice project, since it just spams out a lot of animals, which are very synergistic with our build. And Devastator Spheres and Warbreeds are just good add-ons, but I wouldn't stress them out too much, since they are just side work. We're mostly after Flame Burst weapons and Focus of Devastation here. The other tier 3 tome that deserves a mention here is the Tome of Vigor, because it makes your beasts go super powered. Empowered Beasts allows you to power up your animals in the army, and Unleash Beast allows you to make them go berserk and super strong. Super Growth is good for your own units, and Summon Raider Animal and Totem of the Wild offer you a lot of throwaway units, and Animal Handler is pretty good. Here's the downside though. Dragons are no animals, so Tome of Vigor isn't too synergistic with that. Therefore, I found it much more powerful to go for Devastation. And when it comes down to the following tomes, I actually didn't see anything in the tier 4 tome where I felt like this is just super important and massively good to have. The only tier 4 tome that I really would like to recommend would be Paradise, but that's hard to acquire because you will be lacking the nature affinity for that. So maybe you get a hero for this, but Tome of Paradise with Exhilarating Pollen and its morale bonus is amazing. But you got the opportunity to go and backtrack for other tomes. And that is into Horde, which allows you to go for Spawnkin, super massive damage boost, and which is really, really good since it powers up your tier 1 units, which you will be spamming a lot. And the other tomes that I felt like were really worth mentioning here were the Tome of Inquisition, which is amazing because of Inquisitor's Mark, debuffing the enemies heavily by skirmisher attacks, and also the Inquisitors fit into your skirmisher build, and there's also a lot of synergy in these damage types. And the Tribunal is pretty nice for the knowledge gain. It's pretty good tome to backtrack into. And Doom Herald. Since we rock Revelry, Doom Herald is nice because Cruel Weaponry kicks hard to low morale enemies. Joy Siphoners makes your supporters even more horrible, and Prelude of Doom and Cause Despair are really good morale killers. And last but not least, where is it? Where is my good friend? I want to point towards Tome of Pandemonium because it powers up your supporters even more. But among the tier 4 tomes, I didn't feel like there was too much that I really loved. Tome of Scrying gets a honorable mention because Mental Mark and Summit Watcher is pretty good, but don't go too crazy for these. Now, that's the tomes. Feel free to choose your own liking in the late game. I think that was a good overview. Let's talk about units. So, we have a pretty wide roster here when you check this out. The Harriers and the Mercenaries are merely early game fodder. Only use them as long as you have to. Slithers and Wyverns are way to go for your build, and as soon as you can recruit Slither hatchlings, go for them. They are amazing because their ranged attack is up every turn. Unlike other skirmisher units, they can freely varied between melee and ranged attacks, which is really, really good. Also, they are slippery and swift, and they have Draconic Rage, so if they get low, they hit harder. So they obviously evolve into Slithers, which I will be introducing a little bit later. These guys are a major backbone of your army, together with the Wyverns that can be summoned via this spell, which are basically just Draconic Rage fighters with no flavor until they evolve. Now, tier 2 units, Mage Locks are amazing secondary supporters because Take Aim is really good. Marking is important for your faction because marking increases the damage via focused aggression. As soon as you have the spell which applies focused aggression on the animals, which really force as quick as possible, marking increases the damage of your slithers of everything. Therefore, Mage Locks can go up front, mark somebody, and next turn fire. They're amazingly good, even without any bonuses because of their insanely high base damage, and mind you, we're playing a crit build. This hits like a truck. if it is a crit. It's amazing. You don't need any big build-ups, any big unit enchantments. They just hit like a truck and they mark things for you. The Overseers, though, are the real important part here because they can patch up your units. This is really good. Subdue, you won't be using that too much in this build. We don't have these sources of immobilization. We are mostly after Mocking Blast. It blinds, that cancels out retaliation attacks and lowers ranged attacks, and it always marks. This is a really, really good combo. But I want to stress out here, if you want a guaranteed mark, the Mage Lock is better because it cannot miss. The Overseer's mark can miss if the ranged attack misses. Really important to note. The tier 3 units in this of your racial stuff, you won't be needing them too much. The Dragoons are amazing because of their harrying shot, inflicting distraction, which is again opening up the flanking venue, and they got the Master Skirmisher trait, allowing them to move in and move out. But all in all, you don't have to rely too hard on these. I personally think your money is better spent on Dragons later, but it's up to you. Like I said, the Wild Speakers are not that important for this build. I was mostly disappointed about them. The damage is low. Conjure Animal isn't as powerful as you need it to be because it's only a tier 1 animal unit. The only real big deal is Unleash the Beast, but I felt like I was better off with an extra Overseer or Scald. Scalds are, like I said already, your damage amplifiers, and I personally think they are better than the Wild Speakers. It goes even as far as me skipping the Wild Speakers in some regards. Mage Lock Cannons, yeah, if you have the War Spoils, they are just good units. They're, even if they aren't buffed or anything, but they aren't as synergistic in this build. And then there's Dragons. Dragons, as soon as you can afford them, build them so they can evolve into big tier 5 units. Build as many as you can afford. Come on, there we go. Build as many as you can afford and turn them into tier 5 monsters that will dominate the battlefield all on their own. They have intimidating aura right from the get-go, and also Draconic Rage, and like I said, they benefit from rapid evolution enchantments so they can level up even faster. Combine that with your Revelry Tome and you go for really, really fast training times. And if you want to train up tier 3 Wyvern units, just build up a Wyvern Eyrie and get going. So this is what you're using. Now, let's talk strategy. This build is meant to go aggressive right from the beginning of the game. Just keep killing stuff. Try to lose only things that you can easily resummon, and or use the resurgence of your rapid evolution spell or your healing spell, because as soon as you healed up a tier 1 evolver, he can safely die. There's no problem in it. You can also utilize evolving animals in your strategy early on really well, but first and foremostly, try to conquer as much as you can and spread yourself out as hard as you can and keep as many slithers and wyverns alive in your conquest. Your build is pretty good in the early stages. The tier 1 tomes that you facilitate are excellent at just beating down anything that goes against you. Your big weakness, though, are bursty, strong, high tier units early on, but this problem grows less and less of is lessening the further you go. And once you hit the tier 2 tomes with the skulls and everything, it's really hard to lose fights. Your strategy is always around focusing the losses on either the Slither hatchlings, or your heroes, of course, should try to focus into summoning units. For Reavers, summons are really, really powerful, and when you skill up your heroes, don't sleep on experienced leader. It's an amazing trait for this build, because the more experience you gain, the better. Mark Target is for me personally a must-have on Reavers, because it's again a 10% damage bonus, and this build has, besides of the Overseer's marking and the Mage Locks, no good ways of marking enemies besides spells, so it's really important to have that on your heroes if you want to burst down somebody. Pack Leader is really good, and Revel's Triumph, like I said already, don't sleep on that, neither on Shepherd. I personally rock Restore really often because of the negative status effect Purge, which we would have access to only on Tier 3. The rest of the things here are depending on your own taste. It's mostly about making sure that you facilitate the Tier 1 roster well, and then you can just go for whatever you want. I also want to point out how good the mage lock heroes are, and if you choose your hero, you can go for whatever way you want. You can of course go for a dragon leader, but only champions get to use a mage lock right from the get-go. It's pretty interesting to note, and a hidden bonus in the Reaver faction. When you want to go for your early game, try to get your 3 cities as fast as possible, at least 2 of them. And as soon as you have 2 banners rolling, find the weakest free city and start waging war. Or just bash your local AI enemy in. It's very important to note that you have sort of a power drop between the acquisition of the tier 2 tomes here. This is where you are like the weakest, because your army will be only really good as soon as you have the slithers evolved. So the tier 3 slithers are the treasures in your army, as are the evolved dragons. Wyverns not so much, because you can't just recruit them via the Eyrie later, but slithers are brutal. Their venomous spit attack is online every turn, and it deals a lot of damage. Since we're playing on crits, it hits hard. If you have a flanking crit, you can easily score 50 to 60 points of damage, and I'm not over-exaggerating here on up to tier 3 units. Especially since we can amplify the damage by 50% more via marking. It's just crazy. And if you start to buff up animals via the Vigor Tome, these guys can be the driving force of your entire army. The big downside is, if they die, they're lost. And it's pretty hard to replace them, because you have to evolve a nice other pack of slithers. So as a idea for a strategy here, it pays off to have an extra hero somewhere behind the lines and just have him guard a pack of slithers or fire dragon. Just important that he has the experienced leader trait, so you can go for that. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that you can go in the Empire trait here for Lure of a Horde, which is really powerful because it replaces your pool so quickly. You have a couple of darkness traits due to the powerful Evoker's trait. Here again, a reason why I don't like to swap that out. It gives you access to Knowledge Extraction and Shadow Binding, which are both really good spells. And we got also a lot of Materium and Nature here. So that allows you faster expansion. It allows you to go for the mana mines, which is amazing in itself. And it also gives you access to the Spirit Wolf, which I totally would recommend. It's a free resurgence unit that comes back if it dies, and throwaway units are really important for you. Since we even got access to All Seeing, it's even worth picking up a Whispering Stone here if you want to, and if the game goes long enough, you might be even picking up a second one, because you can even utilize that despite being Reaver, which is pretty cool. Also, battlefield looting comes in quite handy, and impressment as well, because you rock a lot of tier 1 units. And last but not least, try to keep as many units as possible on the field and in your army, and just overrun the enemy wherever you can. This was a pretty worst case scenario start, and I was able to get myself going. The biggest strengths of this game are that you can explode early on, and as soon as you hit tier 3, you evolve into some brick wall. Its biggest downside is that you are fairly vulnerable against bursts in the early game, unless you play around that smartly. Now, that's all I have to say for this one. Feel free to drop me your comments down below. Have fun while trying it out for yourself. Those slithers are amazing, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Just keep in mind, try to focus your losses where they don't hurt, and everything will be fun. So, Thumbs up and subscriptions are very, very welcome. Consider checking out the description box leading to various other links, among these Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee. I'd be delighted if you'd give them a look, and as usual, I want to thank all the supporters of the channel. I deeply appreciate your guys' help, and of course, I thank you for watching this video up until after the ad break. I appreciate. Hope you have a good time. See you all next time. Bye-bye.